Hey, welcome back, everyone. Um, cool. I hope you got a drink of water. Grab a snack. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Berenice Dimas. So Bere, she, they, ella is a queer herbalist, writer, and birth worker. She is the founder of Hood Herbalism, a community-based herbal educational project. Berenice encourages people to reconnect with the spirit of the land and its plant medicines. She has facilitated learning spaces in the community at K-12 schools and universities over the last decade. And, in carrying on that theme again of building, meaningful relationships, I've known Vera for a long time, and she is someone that I have a really special connection to. As she was my doula and someone who supported me in just a big transition in my life, and I know we'll get to share more and learn more about that. But for now, we're gonna shift to her presentation. And the title, is it still the same, Bere? The same one? Okay, Reciprocal Relationality with Plants and Their Medicine. So thank you, Bere, for joining us, and everyone join me in welcoming her.
Thank you, Claudia, for that beautiful introduction. It has been an honor to have you in my life, so I feel really blessed to be here today. Can everybody hear me okay? I don't have my little headphones today, so I'm feeling kind of weird because I'm in a bigger room and it has some echoey, soundy thing. What's really interesting about this conversation we're having today is that actually it was witnessing Claudia give birth that really activated a deep memory inside of me that called for me to say yes to a path that I had been saying no to for a long time, which is to become a midwife. Well, to support the birthing of babies in this world. So I was already doing that for many years up until the time that Claudia gave birth. But when I saw your baby come into the world, it was like I had to be closer. And so I enrolled in midwifery school because unfortunately here in the United States, we can't practice traditional parteria without a license. It's illegal, and there's actually midwives imprisoned still because of receiving babies before it was legalized, specifically here in California. And so, it's been interesting to, have this conversation around what does it mean to become sovereign in all of these ways. And I'm really understanding that now in midwifery school and going through the schooling process of the licensing or the licensing process of that, and how it also empties out the souls of these people that have this calling and this path and this medicine in their family, and that have to go through the schooling process of it. And there's a really high dropout rate of people of color in midwifery programs, or people that can't practice because they take the test 4 or 5 times the norm that we have to take to get licensed, and then we have to go through the licensing in California, and they can't pass it, and we can't practice, and we can't be receiving the babies. And so what is interesting for me is that I'm witnessing that the state of birth here in Turtle Island is reflective of the state of the planet and the state of our well-being. And I am deeply committed to supporting the just process of babies coming into this world for however long they choose to come, whether they come and they leave before they come earthside, or whether they come earthside and decide to leave shortly after, or whether they decide to stay here. And so it's been an interesting process for me, and just wanted to share that. I'm so grateful to Lucha for, just holding it down. Thank you, Santiago, for inviting us. Thank you, Claudia, for, facilitating this conversation. Thank you to Jessa, who started us off really getting us to think about antiviral diet, native foods, connecting to lands, watching seeds grow, right? And then Marta really taking us deep in that conversation. Thank you, Marta, for having us reflect about, the vulnerability and disposability that we have here as people, and how we're really trying to shift that, right? Connecting home and housing to our relationship to the earth, thinking about the punishment and the criminalization of wanting just decent human rights still, right? And then getting us to think about what is health, right? And being resourceful and witnessing the abundance of the earth and learning from it. And then breaking rules and demanding more from our systems that we are, living within right now. So thank you so much to both of you. I know that Jessa had to leave, but thank you, Marta, for adding on to the conversation. And what I want to do today is I'm a really practical person. So I was like, okay, what can I add to this dialogue? So I actually changed it up this morning. And as people were talking, I was like, all right, I've been like shifting the conversation in my presentation because I like practical things. I'm a practical person. What is tangible? What are things that we could do? And I feel like hood herbalism is a reflection of that for me. It really reflects also, like, similar to Claudia, like my own teachings of growing up with a single parent that works. Right now she's working. She just had surgery yesterday and she's up and about working because she has to, and I'm here attending to her. Kind of, she lets me a little bit, she's so funny. But that person in that room taught me so much, raised me with plant medicine, raised me really afraid of and not trusting the health systems here when she got here. And I feel like for me, it's really important to honor her in that way. And so the work that I do honors the lineage of my family, the lineage of the medicine folks in my family, and it honors my mom and the ways that she raised us with very little resource, but with so much that was abundant in her small little pot garden that she had. And so, I was born in Mexico. My family is from Michoacan, so we're Purepecha on my maternal side, and on my paternal side, we're Mazahua, and we're also Otomi from Guanajuato and from the Valley of Toluca. And so a lot of, and I'm still learning other ancestries stemming from my lineage, but that's what I have access to and I understand at this moment. And I was brought here to Tangva Gabrielino lands when I was 3 years old, and I'm really grateful to the San Gabriel Valley and to the mountains and to the rivers because they witnessed my growth and they tended to my health and my well-being. And so, and honoring them as well, like part of the work that I do and helping supporting folks and reconnecting to the land is honoring those lands that raised me, the land that witnessed my birth, and the lands that continue to hold me as I'm moving through the earth and growing and evolving as a person. So I'm so grateful to them. And I'm also really grateful to, the spirits of the plants. I always tell folks this when I teach classes, like, I'm accountable to the plants first, and that they're my accountability. The spirits that protect the plants, the spirits that protect the medicines, the spirits that give me permission to do this work, and I'm accountable to them first. And if I'm messing around, then the work isn't gonna flow and evolve in the way it has because I'm not accountable to them. And so I always like to just kind of name that as well. The conversation today, I think, is around just practicality of being prepared. So quick little I love side stories. I'm an air sign. No, I'm just kidding. I love side stories because contextualizes a lot of things. So here's a little side story. I went to the ceremony 2 weeks ago, and we were out in El Rancho near Tecate, and I happened to get pretty attacked by a dog. I got bit several times on my thigh and on my arm, and I didn't realize I was getting bit by this dog until maybe a minute or so in. By then the dog had already bit my arm, my thighs, and I remember seeing my hand in the dog's mouth when I was able to kind of react, and I was like, oh, I'm getting bit by a dog right now. And I screamed. The dog's owner came out of the house that was nearby. The dog got scared, ran off, and I booked it. I screamed off the top of my lungs, and I was screaming, I'm bleeding, I'm bleeding, I'm bleeding. And I was really bloody. Like, there was blood dripping down. I couldn't even see my hands of how much blood there was in my hands. And I ran to the area where everybody else was at. People kind of reacted, somebody took off their faja and they wrapped it around my arm and trying to put pressure on it, trying to respond, right? And then I'm like, I think I got bit in my leg, and then we had to struggle moving my huipil and my skirt, and my butt was out everywhere, and it was just so dramatic, bro. And then people get to see my thigh, and my thigh is bleeding, and when they're seeing how much blood is coming out of me, I feel like everybody freezes. And I was in a circle with health professionals, people that have licenses, clinical licenses, and everybody freezes. And I'm watching everybody freeze, and I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody's reacting, because none of us were reacting. We were all in shock. So then I immediately in my brain have somebody go run up to the room, grab my toiletry bag where I had a small emergency first aid kit, I have somebody else run to get my bag where I had water. I was like, I need to stop this bleeding now. We're so far away. We're in a dirt road, really, really far away from the nearest hospital. Like, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to bleed out. Is kind of where I went in my brain. And so, you know, they grab the keys to my car. Somebody runs to my car, grabs the emergency kit. They come back, and I'm literally step by step walking through, like helping folks help me to stop the bleeding, to disinfect with what we had, and to pack it with something to stop it. So I'm going to talk about all the things that I did, because all those plants literally saved my life. By the time I ended up in the ER to get antibiotics and to get the wounds professionally, medically cleaned, the doctors were in shock, and they were like, wow, because when I explained how bad it was, and when they saw where the wounds were and the punctures, they couldn't believe it wasn't as infected as it could have been. They're like, wow, it's not really infected, but it's very swollen. This is what you could have done, and this is what we're gonna do. So they cleaned it out. They gave me antibiotics, and I'm feeling so much better today, 2 weeks later. But I was having a moment because I was like, wow, even in the group of like health professionals, like we can still not be ready. And so one of the things that happened with the pandemic was that I received messages because of the spaces that I moved through by elders letting us know that something really big was going to happen. I knew 2 years before the pandemic was going to happen, and I don't really share this as often, but I do want to name it today because it's important within the context of what I'm going to share with you today. But I knew something was going to happen to the month. The elders were like, this month, this year, and sure enough, exactly March 2020. Right. And so for me, 2019, 2020, well, we can get into the logistics of that. But the point is that, you know, I knew that when they declared the pandemic in March, that was the day, right? And so for me, what was interesting is that when I knew that 2 years beforehand, what I did is most of the programming for Hood Herbalism revolved around a Stay Ready series, which is a series around helping folks just be ready to respond in emergency situations. And all of my programming that year was about that. And I didn't really want to share with folks, something really bad's going to happen in 2 years or next year. And it's going to probably happen in March. But I was just trying to get people in the community to have basic emergency response skills, herbal first aid trainings, herbal medicine kits ready to go. And so my question for you all today in the chat is, how many of you have an emergency backpack with a pretty well labeled emergency kit ready right at this moment? Put it in the chat. I want to see it. You can just say yes, no, maybe, I do. And then now, bonus points. Do you have an herbal first aid kit ready to go right at this moment? Everything is scattered. Yes, yes. Okay, I see you all. 2 yeses. No. Okay, great. Hopefully today you will feel a little bit more prepared to get off this call at the end and get yourself together. Had I not had what I had, I saved my life that day. We were so far away. Had I not had what I had, I don't know if I would have made it. I mean, I probably would have made it to kids' house, but I'm being like thinking worst case scenario and best case scenario. Best case scenario is what happened. Worst case scenario is like the infection would have spread before I got to the hospital. I would have gotten there in really, really bad shape. Now, in retrospect, I learned how severe dog bites are. This is my first time experiencing a dog bite. I've never had one in my life. And so now I understand a little bit more. But at the moment, I didn't. But what I did know is, what do I have around me? What can I use? What do I know about what's happening? And how do I respond to that? So that's kind of what I want us to kind of do today. Yes. Lots of wound care stuff, right? And I have a lot of training and herbal medic stuff. I have a lot of training and emergency response. And so that brain kicked in while I was also in shock, which was interesting, but it's another story. It's because of, the capacity that we have as communities of color to just handle it and do that often, unfortunately, but that's where we're at. So let me get into the presentation for you all. And that's kind of where I want to take us today. How do folks feel about that? Let me bring the chat up. Yeah, y'all good? Y'all want to do some herbal first aid 101? 2.0. I'll do a 2.0. It's a little advanced, okay? So we'll do 2.0. Awesome. Also, I want to tell you that I have already put it in the drive. So people made a folder for y'all that organized this event. Don't sleep on it. It's right here. So let me actually share what I put on the drive first, and then I'll go into the presentation. And this is my folder, Berenice Dimas, Reciprocal Relationality with Plants, I already added an 8-page document in here that has most of the questions I'm asking in the presentation. And it has stuff around protests, marches, demonstrations. And then there's a bunch of information on plants for wound healing, some remedios you can use, different, like a plant profile list of plants that you can have prepared, eye washes, anxiety support tea. I heard folks asking for that. Cold and flu, how to stop bleeding, disinfecting wounds. There's recipes on how to make an herbal vaporu without the petroleum, because the vaporu that we get from the stores has petroleum in it. Petroleum is not very good for our skin. So here's a recipe where you can use wax instead of the petroleum to solidify the oil to make the vaporu. Different salves, sunscreen, how to use zinc. There's a chart on how to use zinc in here. How to make hand sanitizers is still relevant. We are still in the middle, very much in the middle of a pandemic. A lot of messages from my teachers, elders are like at least another 2 years, at least, of being in a pandemic where we're still losing a lot of folks in our community. So we're not out yet. We're at the peak of it, I believe. And so this is still relevant information, and how to do a poultice, insect bite liniment, a bunch of stuff. So there you are, y'all, an 8-page document. And there's also a document in here that gives you a link to this, which is a folder that I've been compiling through the pandemic of disease and resources for anything related to like chemical weapon, like disinfecting stuff, doing emergency medical support. There's an alternatives to EMS anthology in here, herbal first aid. Like the document is in here again, the herbal first aid document I put in there. There's a bunch of resources in here, travel remedies for common malady. Like there's a Zapatista book that I found while I was also in Chiapas that I put a chapter of it in here. So I put the cover of the book in there. And there's also a chapter in there on how to do some disinfecting wound stuff. So if you've never, for folks that are, familiar with the movement, they have a book. The book is really, really, it's hard to find, but it's really useful. So you have if you want it, you'll find it, type of thing. So there, I want to point it out because we were talking about the Zapatistas. It's right here. And there's a bunch of other different street medic guides in here for you all. Okay. So let's get started. Again, my name is Berenice Dimas. I am the founder, visionary of Herbalism Community's Herbal Education Project, based out of Tangva lands, Los Angeles, California. And I am really happy to be here and sharing this information with you all. So a couple of things, observations that I've made through the pandemic. And so there's there's a lot of people sharing a lot of information in relation to what they were observing with public health through this pandemic. And there's this, let me go back. I'm trying to fix my screen really quick because I can't see certain things. So let me try again. Okay. So there's this doctor, there's this Twitter post that somebody posted around, the information that was going on in the communities. No doctor, not one school, not one news channel, not one person in authority over the last 5 months. This was early in the pandemic, told us how to naturally boost our immune system. All they were pushing for was masks, social distancing, tests, vaccines, nothing about vitamins, healthy foods, sunshine. The game is rigged. And so when I saw this little, I'm having some stuff with my presentation, y'all. So hold on, give me a second. I have to move things around so I can see. So when I was watching, everything unfold, these are some of my observations, right? The overwhelming focus on social media, on social distancing, mask testing, and vaccines, which again, all serve their purpose, no argument there. And I was witnessing early on, these conversations were predominantly taking over, and we weren't really getting that information around aspects of public health, right? Like what all of our presenters have been saying so far, thinking about education related to food, nutrition, day-to-day practices. So that's what my focus was in, because I was watching it happen in real time. There's also an initial focus on the death numbers, right? We kept seeing numbers of deaths, but we weren't hearing stories. Like when I got COVID in June, right? The pandemic was declared in March. by June, I still didn't know anybody in my immediate or distant circle that had gotten COVID. I had no idea what people were doing really to take care of themselves, aside from what I already knew as an herbalist and as a person that understands plants as medicine, right? And so I was watching also how we weren't getting that information. We weren't hearing stories about people recovering and what they were doing because that wasn't information that was accessible to us. There's also lack of access, clearly, right? And this is a historical conversation we're having around lack of access and resources to relate to health, right, for most at-risk populations. But what happened is that, I joined the Alley Herbalist Collective. We offered herbal medicine to a bunch of different movements, healthcare professionals, people that were on the fields responding to things. I remember going to the house when all this was happening with you, Marta, right, and taking medicine to you all as well. Just feeling really connected to you all, doing stuff out of Eastside Cafe. Like, there's just so much connections here of the work that we're doing together and how we've kind of crossed paths along the way, right? But I remember joining the Alley Herbalist Collective and just helping make medicine, hundreds of medicine bottles and things, and we just were like taking them everywhere to anybody that needed medicine, right? And so I was really inspired by witnessing other folks in mutual aid, offering mutual aid, being part of a collective offering that on the field, on the ground, and also how communities were supporting each other without relying on institutions for that support. And so today what I'm going to share is like some basic things, but before I always start when I'm doing any public conversations, I always have to talk about the plants first, right? Because we're centering them in their knowledge. And so again, I know folks here might already know this, but it's good to just name, right, that plants are older than us. They have taught us how to survive, but also how to thrive for generations. We wouldn't be here without plant medicine. We wouldn't have survived colonialism as folks of color, as colonized folks without plant medicine. Since plants are older, they're also wiser and know a lot more than we do. And people from all over the world have had and continue to have long relations with plants that grew around them. Like, these are facts in our communities, right? Having a relationship with plants for me is really important, essential during these times. Like, we need plants. We need plants. We need their medicine. We need to have relationships with them, right? And Marta was talking, and both presenters have been kind of touching upon these conversations, right? We have a historical interconnected relationship with the earth, right? We are, the earth's health reflects our health and vice versa. And so we need to keep that in mind when we're working and or interacting with the plants. And when we connect with plants, we're also connecting with their ancestors, the ancestors that protect those plants, the ancestors that protect the practices and the healing modalities in relation to those plants, and in our own ancestral traditions and healing practices. Building relations with plants and the earth is an act of resistance against institutions and worldviews and frameworks who depend on our disconnection from them. There is a system established. That's part of the colonial project. It's intact. It's still very present, right? And so you building a relationship with plants, you witnessing seeds grow, you going outside and acknowledging the soil and everything that grows around it is a direct act of resistance, right? Against these institutions that are expecting you. They rely on us to not have them, to continue to push forward the colonial projects. And plants support us in so many different ways. They are really helpful at short and long-term support. When we engage with them, what I've learned throughout my life with plant medicine is that they have a particular way of communicating with us. So it requires a particular type of awareness from us, right? Because they are not just going in and taking care of this immediately. They can do that, but they take time. Just like they take time to grow, they take time to heal. And what I notice in a lot of people through my work is that we are having to work on building trust that the plants will have our back, that they will be able to take care of us, because we don't get immediate release or relief, right? The way we're used to with some pharmaceuticals, right? And so we have to shift our understanding of how to perceive the medicine of plants in our body when we're so accustomed to systems that have us like, boom, you take this and you feel the immediate relief. Plants don't operate in that way. And so we cannot operate in that way when we interact with them. Although they are really fast with some things, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, like stopping blood. The way plants connect with us is different, so it requires a different type of awareness. And they help us physically, emotionally, and spiritually. They do so much of that simultaneously, and that's why I love them so much, and I trust them deeply, and I always love to share their love with people. Plants have been and continue to be a primary medicine. So there's people all over the world that don't have access to hospitals, that live in the rancho, that need to write a donkey or a horse, and then they have to get on the back of a truck, and then they have to go into the city. It's hours before they can get to a medical center, right? So plants are their primary medicine, and we forget that because right now we're having plants categorized as alternative medicine. They are the original people's medicine. They are the medicine, right? And so treating them accordingly is really important as well when we're interacting with them and giving them that respect that they very much deserve, and also recognizing that people right now all over the world, that's what they rely on primarily to take care of their health and their well-being. So some of the guiding questions for today that are in your worksheet in the folder that the organizers prepared for you that you should definitely save and keep for later are: what does it mean to be prepared for an emergency situation? What are things you already carry that help you feel supported in an emergency situation? How can plants support us in being prepared? And how can we be prepared with the most minimal amount of herbal medicine for a lot of different situations? So this is why like a good emergency first aid kit is going to be light to carry, simple to use, familiar to you. You have to know it. So that's why you got to make it and check it and update it often. Easy to transport, right? It has to be quick and fast. Powerful, so you need stuff that's concentrated and able to work fast. So there are things that you can make with plant medicine that work fast and useful for multiple things. Very well labeled, because what if you're the one that's in shock? In this situation with me with the dog bite, I was in shock, but I was still like, I could still enunciate and like share and like make out sentences and be able to explain to people what I needed. In some situations that might not be the case. And so if you have things properly labeled, people can respond and help you because it's well labeled. And also safely stored, especially if we have little ones. We don't want them getting into some of these things and, having them impact them in some type of way. Knowing what to be prepared for and what you specifically need. So where are you going, right? So what do you feel like you may need in an emergency situation overall? It should be the guiding question when you're thinking about making an herbal first aid kit or a kit in general. Think about the state of your body, mind, heart, and spirit when you're out. Remember that with herbs, you can add a medicine that helps you physically, but also spiritually and emotionally. For folks, I wanted to add this just for the side tab, like for folks supporting or going out to protests, actions, and demonstrations. What did you take last time? What was the most helpful? What did you need or was missing, right? Those are good questions to have when you're creating these kits. And I have a picture of all the costales at the mercados with the hierbas, the señoras. That's like my happy places going to those. A couple of other things. So there are many ways to pack herbal medicine. You can pack them like in tinctures, sprays, hydrosols, oxymols. Those are all good skills for you to learn moving forward. I teach a whole series on all this stuff through hood herbalism. People come out of here learning how to make all of this, right? Flower essences, tea. Some things, essential oils are really helpful to carry in our kits. Today, I'm going to show you how to make 2 different things, super practical. So get your pen and paper ready so you can take notes if you want to. If not, they're also in your worksheet. Herbal Band-Aids, and I have videos to show you how to do it. And an antiseptic spray. The Herbal Bandaid is literally what saved me from bleeding out. Is what I packed in my wounds and what helped me to stop the bleeding immediately. Questions, comments, thoughts before I move forward. Let me look at the chat. Oh yeah, Big Pharma. Yes, Big Pharma. Let's just name Big Pharma also, right? Okay. I don't see other stuff. So a couple of things before making medicine. Again, plants are as our ancestors. So always remember that the best medicine is going to be medicine you grow. So if that's your starting point, that's a great starting point. Learning to store seeds, starting a seed collection, learning to tend to soil, learning to compost. Like those are important skills to have that are going to really help us moving forward. So if you don't know how to do that, those are practical things that you can do now. Is learning how to compost, learning how to grow food, learning how to germinate seeds, learning how to store seeds, right? Also, just for some research purposes, what are herbs that our ancestors used to use to treat, their wounds and stuff? So like some research or questions you can have, right? But again, herbs are our ancestors. We have to treat them accordingly. So how we grow them, how we harvest them, and how we use them require a lot of respect. Always offering gratitude and offerings to the plants before we harvest from them, before we make medicine from them. Asking for consent, like can I take some, right? Can I harvest from some flowers from your bush, manzanilla? right? Actively asking the plants for consent to take their medicine, right? And I talk about this a lot in my classes around how when we're making medicine, it's a reciprocal, respectful, consensual process. And so we have to actively practice that. And if you pay attention, the plants teach you about consent and reciprocity and respect. We have to put intentions and communicate the plants, and it goes a long way. So tell them what you're making and why. Tell them and state that, because you're infusing your intention in your medicine. Homegrown medicine is always the best medicine, ideally, because you know what's in the soil, you know who harvested it, you know the mood of that person. When you go buy something, you don't know any of that. So you're taking in that energy as well. Like, you don't know what the quality of the soil was, how the plant was harvested or grown. Did they harvest it with love? If there's toxins in the soils, like, you don't know those things. So those are important to do. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the Herbal Bandaid that I'm going to talk about today is with 2 plants, super simple, yarrow and lavender. So 4 parts yarrow leaf and flower, and you want both of these to be dry. Okay, yarrow, you can do the leaf, flower, and the stem. Lavender, the flowers, and they all have to be dry. This Band-Aid will stop bleeding and help heal the wound. It's going to help prevent infection, hopefully, or at least slow it down. By slowing down and inhibiting the spread of bacteria, help relieve some pain on the wound, and help reduce inflammation. The fact that I had lavender in that Herbal Bandaid blend, I think, is what helped whatever bacteria could have potentially spread fast in my body to slow down the process. So I specifically added lavender in this blend because of that. In an emergency situation where you don't have anything else to disinfect, if there's lavender in there, it's going to take care of it, at least slow it down or support. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your herbs. You're going to add 4 parts of dry yarrow, leaf, and flower, and 1 part of dry lavender in a bowl. Fresh flowers will work if you put it directly, but if you want it in a kit, you want it dry so it lasts you longer. It's a preservation process. You're going to mix the herbs and you're going to powder them. So you're going to grind them in like a coffee grinder. I have a coffee grinder just for making, like, grinding plants. And then you're going to package it, label it, and store it, right? I have it in a little jar, and I also like to carry little Ziploc bags. When I do street medic stuff, I make a bunch of Herbal Band-Aids, and I put a little description on how to use them, and I give them out. I pass them out to folks in the streets. So I've done that before with students, folks taking my classes when we do herbal for street medic stuff. I love passing those out. So that's how you're going to do it. Super simple. You're going to grab the yarrow. You're going to measure it. So I'm doing 4 parts yarrow. 1 full cup. Okay, I'm going to put it in a bowl. And then you're going to add lavender. I'm doing 1:4 ratio, so that's 1/4 of a cup. I think I added a little bit. Okay, then you're going to mix them. And this is where you add your intention. You're letting the plants know what you're doing, why you're doing it. And then you're going to put them in the coffee grinder and powder them. Okay. Once you powder them, you're gonna grab them and put them in the Ziploc bags in a jar, and you're ready to go. Boom, it's done. You label it. And then you're gonna just label it and seal it. And those are your Herbal Band-Aids. Super easy, ready to go. In an emergency situation, I'm going to show you what to do right now. So I'm going to talk about it. You're going to add that powder in the hand of the person that's bleeding. It has to be the person that's bleeding, okay? Because we want their microbiome to be, we don't want to include another microbiome or more bacteria in the environment. So give it to the person that's bleeding. In this case, I was the one that was bleeding. So I had the person put the yarrow powder in my hands, just like a quarter size. And then you want to activate the herbs. If you don't have it powdered and it's dried and you just have it blend, you have to put it in your mouth and chew it and then spit it back out and then stick it to the wounds. But if you have the powder, which I realize is way more effective and less messy, and then you don't have to stick anything in your mouth, you have the powder. I had one of the people that was there pour a little bit of water from a water bottle in my palm, and I mixed it and made it into a paste. And I started just packing everywhere where I was bleeding, all the punctures, like in my arm and in my thigh. Once it was all packed with the yarrow and the lavender, I wrapped it. So we grabbed the faja that I had used before and we wrapped it and we just held it for like maybe 3 to 4 minutes. It literally stops bleeding that fast. If it's deeper wounds, like gunshot wounds, I would encourage you to put like, and I've done gunshot wound training as well. The very first thing that they have us do is we got to put pressure and stop and also slow the bleeding down. The quickest way to do that is with a tampon. To grab a tampon, you put it in there, it can literally save someone's life, right? In this case, the wound is maybe like a 1st degree tear, I think. I didn't need stitches, but it was pretty deep, you know, especially in one part of my hand that I'm looking at right now, and 2 parts actually that are still very much healing and still there's a lot of scar tissue buildup around them. But anyway, so I packed them really, really well with the yarrow and the lavender. We wrapped it, we waited until I finally stopped the bleeding. When the bleeding was stopped, I rinsed them off, and then I started disinfecting. So in that case, if you have a disinfecting spray, a disinfecting ointment, saline solution, the only thing that we had that the other person that had something was a spray with colloidal silver. That spray had colloidal silver, tea tree, and lavender, and that also saved my life because it immediately disinfected and bubbled. I saw it bubbling. So whatever you can to disinfect after the wound, you want to first stop the bleeding. Once the bleeding is stopped, you got to disinfect right away, right? And so I disinfected, and then I packed it with something to hold me off until we got to the hospital, right? Or until you get to wherever you need to go. And that's where the tepescoite came in, which is a powder that is an ancestral medicine of mine, and I'll talk about. But for the herbal Bandaid, what you want to do is you're going to add water or spit. If there's no water, the person that's bleeding can spit into the powder, and then you pack it, make it into a paste, and then you pack it on the wound where it's bleeding, okay? You put it in the affected area. Your spit shall it's supposed to come from the person in which will be applied to. If you are applying it to someone else, water will be best, so that again we don't get any more bacteria. And you can wrap it or have a Band-Aid or gauze. I've also treated my puppy with this. I had a puppy whose nail broke off and was bleeding out. And I grabbed the yarrow in my hand, I put water in it, and I packed my puppy's paw and I wrapped it, and we were able to get her to the vet. So this is really helpful for children, for little ones that are going to be bleeding. You got to get them somewhere to get support. You got to get them inside to clean them or whatever. Like if you want to stop the bleeding, this is a great way to do it. You're going to hold it on and keep it on. I do a couple of minutes and I just kind of open it on until I see the blood stop. In my case, it stopped like in maybe it was 4 or 5 minutes. I don't remember exactly this particular time, but it usually shouldn't take more than 20 minutes, 25 minutes for everything to stop bleeding. If it's small punctures, bigger punctures, the yarrow might help to slow it down and might not stop the bleeding. But that can hold you off until you get support somewhere else. Okay. Yarrow is also easy to grow and abundant and is native to these lands, to Tonga lands too. Where do we get the yarrow? Adriana, you're going to have to learn how to identify it and grow it. There's different herbal shops at least here in LA where you can get them. There's Herbs of Mexico. There's also Wild Terra where you could go. Wild Terra gives discounts if you say herbalism. I think you get 10% off. So, and then Herbs of Mexico will definitely have tepescoite, yarrow, and lavender. Okay. And other places, you just have to find a local herbal shop near you. Botanicas are also nice. They usually have these plants as well. All right. Antiseptic spray. I just realized I have 10 minutes, so we'll see how much I have so much information in here, but I'm like, let me do at least these 2 things. So I'll do the antiseptic spray and then I'll pause, okay? Antiseptic spray, which can help to disinfect wounds. This one's has a couple more ingredients, but also pretty easy to make once you have them. So you can do a 1/4 cup of calendula chamomile flowers. I like witch hazel instead of alcohol, and so I use 1/4 of a cup of witch hazel for preservative. Some aloe gel and a couple of drops of tea tree and lavender essential oil, and then some vegetable glycerin also to help with preservation. And again, this stuff is in the worksheet as well. The herbal Bandaid can stay on maybe up to 20 minutes. I would take it off after 20 minutes, no more than that. It won't take that long to stop the bleeding. You want to get it off and rinse it off after it stopped the bleeding really quickly so that you can disinfect and pack, like put the antiseptic balm or gel or whatever after. The gel or the brand Band-Aid is for acute response to bleeding. It's not gonna, you still have to like disinfect and put an antiseptic ointment on it, you know? If you need to disinfect, this is a good spray to do it with. And I would actually add some colloidal silver drops to this one now, which I've changed this recipe since the dog bite actually. But this is my go-to recipe. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to make your tea. So I have calendula and chamomile. I'm going to put some hot water in a little jar. This is a 4-ounce jar. Again, I just like to work with my measurements, so it makes it easier. So I'm going to do that. Those are calendula flowers that I grew. And the chamomile, I think I had gotten at Herbs of Mexico this particular time. You're going to cover that. It's like tecito. You're going to let it sit and get nice and concentrated. Okay? Thank you, Lucha. You're going to infuse your calendula chamomile flowers with hot water for 10 to 20 minutes. And you can also use like lavender, garden sage, thyme, rosemary, or any other antiseptic, antimicrobial, antibacterial herbs for this infusion. You're going to strain it. So there I'm straining it. And I got 1/4 exactly because I used 4 ounces. I love my measurements, y'all. Because then sometimes I'm lazy when I'm making things. And if I just have it all measured and it's intact, it's great. There's the witch hazel, 1/4 witch hazel, bam. And I'm going to do the gel. I'm practical, like rápido. Gel, 1/4. I'm going up to 3/4 now, 1/4 of each. And the last one is the vegetable glycerin. There it is, my little drops. I just counted to 4. And then you're going to mix it. Oh, I'm going to add the drops of the essentials. That's right. We're doing tea tree right now. Then we're gonna do lavender. And it takes less than 20 minutes to make if you have all the ingredients. And then you have a little measuring cup where it's just like 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, rapidito. Fast. Okay, you're gonna mix it. I like my little spoons for everything. I have my cositas. Super easy, right? You mixed all of those, and there's your antiseptic spray ready to go, y'all. I'm gonna reuse a bottle that I had from a sanitizer. So reuse what you have, be practical, use what's around you, look in your kitchen, reuse bottles. Fresh aloe can be used, Isabel, but it's gonna mold your spray, so the gel helps with not molding. If you're gonna use fresh aloe, you gotta boil it, and then you gotta blend it, and then you gotta add actually a little pinch of rubbing alcohol in this blend or vodka to preserve it if you're gonna use fresh aloe, because it will mold. So my mom taught me that whenever you're using aloe, if you're gonna want to use it for a longer period of time, you gotta boil it first. So you can boil the sábila, grab it, scrape it off, boil it, let it cool down, blend it, and then you're gonna also add the same measurement. But then I would also add like a tablespoon of alcohol de caña, vodka, or rubbing alcohol to preserve it, because the witch hazel won't be enough. Yeah. So this is a multi-purpose spray that can clean wounds and it's also soothe burns. It's also alcohol free. That's why I make it alcohol free, especially for burns. Right? But for burns, I'll use other things like honey or just lavender, right? But you can use this one as well. Remember that always do a patch test on your skin once you're done making your medicine to make sure you don't have any allergic reactions to it, or do a patch test on someone you're going to be using it, because people respond differently to all the plants. And we use several plants here. We use tea tree, lavender, calendula, and chamomile. And we want to make sure that if we use it with someone, or we're going to gift it, that they don't get an allergic reaction. So that's why labeling your medicine is very important. So with that, what I made, I was able to bottle all these little 1-ounce bottles, and I was able to gift them away to my friends. Okay, super simple. A couple other things just to closing. Always remember to add in your kit things for grounding, relaxing, things for boundaries and protections, immune support, calming your belly things. Ancestral medicines, learning about ancestral medicines. Tepescohuite is the one I wanted to end with because it's the one that also helped me. So that was the last thing I applied to my dog bites. Tepescohuite powder, and it's un cicatrizante. It's a wound healer, so it was able to help my wounds heal. my punctures heal without needing necessarily, in this particular case, without having to, get stitches or any of that on them. But for some situations, you might need stitches. It's really good for burns. I've seen elders in Mexico, like one time we were at a ceremony and a piece of wood, brasa, bounced from the poposhkomi of one of the people carrying the fire. There was a piece of wood that jumped into someone's eye, and the elder immediately put her hands inside a salve of just the pescoite and she just put it on her eye. And was like, don't open it. It's going to help you to not scar up. And then we took care of the burn. But there's so much faith of the pescoite, and the botanical name is Mimosa tenuliflora. There's a lot of so much information out there on the healing properties of the pescoite powder for burns in particular, and also for it's like a surgeon. It stitches. It was amazing to watch it just work on me the last 2 weeks. I am in so much awe and respect for this plant. I'm doing very extensive research on it at the moment because it just was so good to me, and I'm so grateful to it. It also regenerates cells and helps stimulate collagen production for the people I want to do the pescoite mascarillas. And same. Let me keep going. I was going to talk about weekly, but I don't have time to talk about my other plant-based, another ancestral medicine. I also have to talk about cacao in this presentation, but we don't have a lot of time for that. Aftercare, especially you're coming out of protest, contaminating, doing all of that, taking care of your body, making sure you have food prepared if you're going out to take care of other people. So when you come home, you can take care of yourself. Hydration is super important. So making your own Pedialyte or Suero at home, 2 cups of water, 1.5 cups of lemon juice or lime juice, a tablespoon of organic cane sugar, and a teaspoon of sea salt is amazing, or coconut water or Pedialyte. But when you make it yourself at home, you avoid all the extra sugars. You need a little bit of sugar for the electrolytes, but you don't need to have a lot of it. Liver supports, more liver support, some tea. This one's really nice for the heart, with hawthorn flowers, té de tila, linden, ortiga, nettles, and then melissa, lemon balm. Melissa, lemon balm, I know somebody's talking about anxiety. Lemon balm is an amazing anxiolytic, so it helps with anxiety and depression and sadness. It helps to lift and vibrate your mood. And so just getting lemon balm tea, now they have it in tea bags at Sprouts, for example, or at natural food stores. You can literally buy a box of lemon balm tea. It's great for your nervous system. Lung support tea, because we're in the middle of pandemic still. So, mullein, gordolobo, manzanilla, and peppermint, super easy to do. I wanted in the recording, that's why I'm kind of going through them slowly. I usually talk about rest and the nervous system. Remember that our nervous system is responsible for our voluntary movements. And so being able to access rest is really important to regenerate our nervous system, right? And to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which impacts our immune system and our digestion, right? And this allows us to think, function more clearly, connect with others more openly, and access more vital life energy, which can help us strategize and be more effective community organizers, okay? So rest. I can't answer those personal questions. Adriana, you can email me and I'm happy to ask you more questions and figure out how we can support you. And then I wanted to end with this quote that I love. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. By Octavia Butler and Herbal Bandaid. You can contact me via IG or my website, berenicedimas.com. I do personal sessions with folks in herbal consultations where I can answer questions like the one you have, Adriana. And then my Hood Herbalism IG is at Hood Herbalism. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bere, for walking us through the medicine making and just reminding us that everything we need is here and we just have to connect with it, make the time to really get to know and build those relationships with all our plants and our sorry. I know it's gonna be on the recording.
It's all good. Keep immunizing yourself.
all of our plant ancestors. There we go. Thank you so much. I know that a lot of questions have come up and people are just sharing a lot of thoughts. So I just want to encourage everyone to continue that conversation in the chat. And again, Bere shared their contact information so you can contact them if you have